Becoming Awesome with Peter D. Expand your consciousness. Welcome to Becoming Awesome. We have a very special conversation today with Mari Reisberg of the Sustaining Creativity podcast. How you doing, Mari?
I'm well, thanks. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to chat with you about creativity today.
Super duper. I'm excited. I wore my finest swing dancing shirt just to be a little creative, you know?
Perfect. I wear a plain white t-shirt just to be a blank canvas.
Right. Anybody can supply any painting they want on that. So I'm Peter D. Benedictus. Remember, please like, subscribe, share, follow. That lets the computer algorithm know that other people interested in becoming awesome can find this. So thank you for your help. Now, Mari is a licensed professional counselor in Colorado. She holds an MA in somatic counseling psychology, dance movement therapy from Naropa University, and a BFA in acting from the Hart School of Music. In addition to being the director of utilization review for North Star Transitions and Addiction Recovery Center in Boulder, Colorado, Mari hosts the Sustaining Creativity podcast, where you can find her interviewing a wide variety of individuals with really cool ideas and experiences about creativity. Mari shares her Sustaining Creativity workshops at conferences across the country. She has a tremendous passion for supporting people in their creativity and hopes to inspire, challenge, and offer sustainability for anyone looking to expand their creative life. So with that, let me introduce Mari Reisberg.
Thank you so much for that. That's so sweet to have all of that displayed for me. As you said, I'm Mari Reisberg, and I'm the host of the Sustaining Creativity podcast. I'm also a licensed professional counselor. I was an actor. I'm also a singer. I wear many hats across my lifetime. I grew up in Portland, Oregon, and traveled to Connecticut for college, and then lived in New York City for a while and sang with an Irish band, was a nanny, and then slowly have been making my way back towards the West Coast and got stopped in Colorado for grad school and loved it, loved the mountains. And
Gotta love Colorado for sure.
It's so beautiful and amazing, and I love getting outside and camping and hiking. So Colorado.
Well, that was how
perfect.
I met you. I was camping near Pagosa Springs, Colorado, and I decided I need to take a hot tub since it is Pagosa Springs, and we're on the roof, and I'm just minding my own business, having a great day, when the divine sees fit to drop Mari in the tub near me, and it made a great night even better.
I agree. It was so wonderful to meet you and chat about podcasts and the things that you're doing and the things that I'm doing. And it was such a treat to meet you and then have you reach out to have me as a guest on your podcast.
Well, you exemplify what I'm trying to do with this podcast. The title's Becoming Awesome. I want to half the time I do tips and tools because we're in a transition time. But the other half the time I want to interview so we can demonstrate and have people show what it's like to become awesome, to step out and do just incredible things, which I think you're doing. So tell me, what led you to start the Sustaining Creativity podcast? How did you move into that?
Yeah, so I went to acting school and got an amazing training to be a performer. And then I realized I needed some life skills, some coping skills about how to navigate the world of performing. And when I went and got my master's degree, I discovered, wow, all of these psychology skills and tools that I was learning would have been so helpful during my undergraduate degree in acting, and then also navigating the performing world after I graduated. And so I started to piece these components together, my degrees in acting and psychology, to develop my sustaining creativity work. And I started to share it with performers and non-performers across the country. I've been guest artist at Michigan State in their graduate and undergraduate acting departments,
Nice.
Guest lecturer at CU Boulder in their dance and acting departments, sharing this work with performers as they kind of launch into the bigger world of performing. And then as I would just talk to people about the work that I was doing, I kept hearing people tell me, oh, I'm not creative. And I could have told them 10 to 15 reasons they were creative in the 5 minutes that we had been talking. So I started thinking, I love interviewing people. As a therapist, I really appreciate hearing people's stories and supporting them to navigate the challenges in their lives and figure out tools and tips to support change and growth. So I thought, I like listening to interview podcasts, and this is kind of a unique niche in terms of creativity and what creativity means to different people. So that's how I started the
Nice.
podcast, and we just
Nice.
launched in May of this year, and our 17th episode was released today.
Oh, well, there you go. I'm doing twice a week. I started them in July, and I just released or published episode 16. So we're going there. But before I get to the rest of the questions we discussed, I want to take a little bit of a detour because you said something really interesting. You said you were meeting lots of people who would deny their creativity. Mm-hmm. All right. And I've been really focusing on how to get the mental blocks out of yourself that keep you down, keep you less than. Can you just speak a little bit about what it is that you see that's running through the thread that keeps people from just saying, I'm going to go out there and be awesome?
Right. Yeah. I think there's so many blocks that people have. And at the same time, many people, they know that they're there, but they aren't 100% aware of them when they show up in the moment. So I think things that are really helpful is slowing down. When you notice that experience of fear arising, can you push the pause button, do some deep breathing, or a breathing exercise like a 4-square breathing. So you're breathing in for a count of 4, holding your breath for a count of 4, exhaling for a count of 4, and then holding your breath for a count of 4. And doing that, 3 to 5 times can really help de-escalate your nervous system so that you're kind of approaching the risk or creative expression from a space of more stability than anxiety or fear. When we get into that fight or flight zone, it's really hard to be present. Our body takes over.
What I find for me is that the pattern gets put on early on, and then I don't even pay attention to it. And I walk around with all the I can't statements. I recently did a podcast episode where the person's whose work I was teaching suggested that we ask our friends to just gently say, oh, I just heard another I can't from you.
Yeah. Yeah. If you have that supportive network, someone you really trust, someone who you aren't going to have big reaction to when they say, oh, I heard you say I can't.
Right.
Yeah. So creating that supportive foundation for you to take those creative risks or expressions from, I think, is really helpful.
Sweet. So let's dive into some of the fun stuff. You've got 16 episodes so far, and you told me you got more in the can. So you've interviewed quite a few diverse people. Can you tell me 1 or 2 or 3 stories of somebody who's doing something really creative that you're going, wow, that's cool?
Yeah. I think literally every single interview I've done, people are doing amazing things, and their experience of creativity has been awesome. Some people are musicians or actors or producers. I've interviewed some teachers.
Great. So give me the dirt. Give me some specifics about somebody did this or somebody did that, and you went, wow.
Well, one story that has stuck with me and really sparked kind of a new way of looking at creativity is this voiceover actor, Mark Garkusha. When I asked the question, what's your earliest memory of creativity? His response was, he was a very creative liar as a child.
Nice.
And so that really got me thinking, oh, where there's kind of this shadow side to creativity of lying, being really creative, but maybe not necessarily the kind of brighter side of creativity that people think about. And so that story has really stuck with me.
Yeah, one of my favorite characters on Deep Space Nine, which was a great series, was the Cardassian Taylor, who was a spy, and all he did was lie. And and when people would confront him, he goes, "Well, you're not really trying to enjoy your life, are you?"
Oh, see, there's that, it makes me think of like con artists, how creative someone needs to be to con someone else. Not to say that like everyone should go be a con artist, but the experience of creativity.
When I used to hitchhike a lot in my 20s and in grad school and stuff like that, whenever somebody picked me up and it was a long ride, I would just become another person. I would just start to tell stories about who I was, because I only had 2 or 3 hours with this person. I'd never see him again. So I'm like, why not be who I want to be?
Yeah. I mean, friends of mine in acting school, we would do that all the time. We would put on characters from musicals and go to the mall and have full on, adventures at the mall.
Sweet.
as different characters. But some of the other, it really kind of pieces that have stuck with me from people I interviewed. She's a dance movement therapist in Michigan, Kellen Yule, and she has such a creative practice of getting dressed. She really looks at the art of putting an outfit together, and it's her expression of creativity as a therapist working in a psychiatric hospital, and the joy that she gets from putting on her work clothes or her clothes. And it's really a creative process. And I think that's kind of a new way of looking at being creative. I think a lot of people get pigeonholed into that idea of like, oh, performing artists are creative, but to really say like, oh, getting dressed is a creative act.
Right. I'm going to let myself have a little flair this way or that way or whatever you choose.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah. So those have been, there's so many other ones, but those two have definitely stuck out for me. And the episode that was released today, Stuart Sanks, he's a third grade teacher, and his side hustle, he is a drag queen named Shirley Delta Blow, and is just bigger and larger than life. And it was such a treat to interview him and talk about being a third grade teacher and all of the challenges they're experiencing right now through the pandemic. And also, how his creativity has really blossomed and exploded with Shirley Delta Blow, when they have, story hour on Facebook every weekend. And I think it's great. And so that was a lot of fun.
Sweet. Sounds good. So let's bring this to yourself.
Yeah.
All right. You obviously are very talented. You obviously, I remember when we were talking, we were both laughing in the hot tub that, 2 double Leos in the same hot tub, right?
Right. Oh, yes.
So tell me about your life as far as, were there challenges? Were there awarenesses? What was it that let you go from, oh, I'm just going to do the 9 to 5, which you do some, right? To I'm going to also release this side of myself that just makes me smile.
Yeah. I think I have to go back to kind of the beginning. When I was 3 years old, my parents enrolled me in trapeze school.
Trapeze. There you go. Summer camp trapeze.
Right. So a very different, unique childhood. I like to tell people I was essentially raised in the circus, but it was a physical performing arts theater troupe that did aerial dance. And that was the beginning of performing for me. And I was hooked. And performing has been such a huge part of my life. And I think when I was living in New York City, I felt like there was something more that I wanted to do. I would be in a cab or on a bus or out at a diner, and random people, strangers, would come up to me and tell me their life story. And I thought, oh,
That's interesting.
this is kind of unique. I'll never forget sitting at a diner with girlfriends early morning, probably like 2:30, 3 a.m. And this woman came up to our table and she unsolicited said, I am a recovering alcoholic on day 160. I really just need to sit down and have a cup of coffee and talk to someone. And my immediate response was, absolutely, sit down, tell us your story.
That's really wild to actually, do enough self-care. I'm a friend of Bill's, so I understand a little bit about, hey, I just need a little contact now. And then to actually have the self-esteem to say, I'm just going to go over there and get me some hellos.
Yeah. And she sat down and told us her story, and we were chatting, and that kind of got me thinking like, oh, there's something more here for me. People seem to be willing to trust me with their life stories and pieces of information. And so that got me thinking more along the lines of psychology, which had really not been a part of my experience prior to that in terms of as a career. But I knew I needed to be in the creative arts field. So the creative arts therapies, drama therapy, music therapy, dance therapy, art therapy. So dance movement therapy is the one that spoke to me the most. And that kind of led me into the more 9-to-5 job experience. But the whole time I've been a therapist, I still perform every once in a while when I can. And I definitely notice myself getting to a point of stagnation. And that's when I remember like, oh, I'm not doing the other creative, expressive things that fuel my soul, bring me joy, really spark my own creativity. And so those are the pieces that really inspire me, but also, I can easily get sucked into the 9-to-5.
Right. So I'm going to just backtrack a little bit because I'm still excited about the woman in New York.
Oh, yeah.
So my wife tells me the story when she went to one of the self-help workshops, and it was a weekend thing. And when they broke for dinner, their assignment was to get 10 no's before they came back for the next morning, 10 people to say no to their requests. Okay. And so she'd go to the restaurant and ask the waiters to sing for her, and they would. Or she would just go up to other people's tables and say, okay, tell me your life story. And they would, and stuff like that. So she never got any no's at all. So I'm thinking a lot of what triggers me is the fear of being seen. And if I actually express or ask for what I want, I'll be seen, and then whatever happens, happens. Could you talk a little bit about somebody who's stepping out into the world, somebody who's just randomly falls into this podcast and says, what? You mean I can just ask for what I want? I can wear a fun shirt. I could do this. What would you say to that person?
Keep doing it. I mean, don't stop, ride the momentum. I think I always come back to this idea of self-compassion, that there's common humanity in all of our challenges. I'm not the only person who's ever experienced fear of putting myself out there.
Yes, you're the only person on a planet of 7 billion who ever had that feeling.
Exactly. So I do a lot of reminding myself, I'm not the first, I won't be the last. And how can I have some compassion with my emotions and with myself?
Especially yourself, yeah.
And acknowledging, I'm afraid in this moment, and I have choices right now. If I choose to put myself out there, it could fail beautifully, and I would learn a lot from it. I could also put myself out there, and it would be a huge success. Whoever is, dictating or measuring success.
I
So,
ran for governor of New Mexico a couple of years ago, and mainly just to
mhm.
cause trouble. And it was quite a long shot thing, and it was really difficult for 18 months to just do this and spend all the money I spent and everything. What really motivated me was well, the book. I forget the guy's name, but it was about the Madoff scandal. The Ponzi
Oh,
scandal. And,
yeah.
yeah, the guy who busted it and figured it out 10 years before it happened and went to the feds, and they ignored him, of course, because they were in on the scam, right? But he said what motivated him was when he was in the Army and a colonel came over to a base that he was at, and the colonel was running the base. And so he brought in all the senior officers and he asked them to each tell their greatest failure. Okay. And they would
Mhm.
tell their greatest failures. And then he'd go around the room and say, your failure wasn't big enough. You're not going to push the limit. You're not going to be creative. Sorry. And he'd fire them for not having really big failures. And I
Oh
thought,
my God.
wow. So what, for me, it's like, wow, I've got the most spectacular failure I can have.
Mhm.
Anyway, let me just ask you another question here. In this time where we're being told to avoid the evil people, right? You are a virus carrier. I must avoid you, and I must
Mhm.
mask myself so you can't even see or hear, without even getting to all that stuff. There's a lot of loneliness and separation that I see taking place, without even getting into the intentional part of it, which it is. But without even getting to any of that, what do you say to people now in this time of craziness that we're dealing with? Because for me, the biggest thing is, am I willing to step out there? Am I willing to say what I want to say and be what I
Mhm.
want to be? Am I willing to connect? How do I connect? What would you say to people?
Well, that's a really good question. How to connect, how to put yourself out there. I mean, when I think about creativity, it's not just putting yourself out there. What are the creative moments that you're doing just for you that don't need to be put out there? And then what are the ones that you're doing that you want to share with others? And is it one person you want to share it with? Is it 10 people you want to share it with? 100 people? Um, yeah, so having a little more clarity around what you're doing and who is it for? Is it really only for you, or is it something to share with other people? And the virtual platform, while it can pose challenges, I think is such a great option. Even if you were to invite three of your friends to have a Zoom dance party and you're all listening to the same song and dancing around your house and you're doing it together virtually, how much fun might that be? And you're sharing it in that small platform, and that's still a creative experience.
Great. All right. So I'm going to have my peanuts moment. So if you want to be Lucy and put the sign up for a nickel, all right. So I've been going through this thing. My sacred higher self has been calling me to do this podcast. It wants me to get messages out there. All right. So I've been dealing with the ego stuff of, oh, I've only got this many views and I'm not doing it for like advertising because I don't want to do any of that. So I'm really trying to just get to the idea that I'm doing this because I'm being called to do it. Now, the reality is I feel great when I do it, right? And I enjoy the connection and all the stuff that goes out there, regardless of the amount of exposure that happens. But
Yeah.
mentally, I'm kind of doing what you were saying. So can you expound more on how do you find the joy that's going to be best for you and that's within you as you're being creative?
Yeah. I'm reminded of a quote from my friend Stuart, aka Shirley Delta Blow, that he heard from someone else who I don't know, but it's comparison is the thief of joy.
Big score. Say it again.
Comparison is the thief of joy.
Yes.
Yeah. And that has really just stuck to my heart. Like, because doing podcasting, I too have found myself comparing how I do my podcast to other people who are doing similar styles of podcasts and how many views they have or downloads or, whatnot. And I keep coming back to this idea that by comparing myself to someone else, I'm taking away my joy. And podcasts, it brings me so much joy to talk to people. So reminding myself of that is definitely one way that I combat that idea of comparison or that ego component. Also, really, getting in touch with myself, doing my own meditation, being able to sit on a cushion or do a moving meditation, putting on a favorite song that moves my body and I can shake out the comparison, or how do I put my ego aside in this moment and show up for me as my authentic self. And there's definitely some trust that goes along with it, that by showing up as my authentic self, it will attract those who need to hear the things that I'm saying, or
other
share the
authentic
things.
people.
Yeah, exactly. Or share the things that I'm doing with. So there's a lot of trust that goes into it for me.
Cool. So I've got a spiritual take on my whole podcast. That's what's motivating me,
Mm-hmm.
and I know you've got a little bit of background in that from when we talked previously.
Mm-hmm.
The reason I'm bringing it up now is because every single guest, every single one, no matter what their background is, when I say, okay, what's your advice? What are you doing? And they all mention meditation, which you just mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a theme. Tell me, do you think there's a spiritual side to expressing oneself and one's creativity? Would you expound on that for a moment?
Yeah. I mean, if you look at creativity as just being human, I think there's absolutely a spiritual component to it. Anything you do, you can be creative. Anything you're called to do, so having that spiritual calling could be a form of creative expression. The idea, I know I said meditation, and in my mind, I do more movement.
Yeah, I
being
love
a
to do walking
somatic
meditations
person.
myself.
Yeah. So that idea of bringing the spiritual idea or component, or just being a part of the bigger universe in my moving, brings me a lot of grounding and solidness in who I am and what I do. And I really do think there's a huge amount of spirituality that comes in with creative expression. I mean, you hear, or I've heard many people say they had a calling to do a certain creative expression, kind of like you were saying, that spiritual calling to do this podcast.
Burning inside you, right?
Yeah. Or, friends of mine who write music, they wake up in the middle of the night with this light bulb idea that sometimes they feel like is some guidance that they were given in a dream to write a particular song. So I think there's a huge component of spirituality. But then again, it's whatever lens you're choosing to look at it through. I think for some people, creativity is a very systematic experience that may not have a lot of spirituality components to it.
I kind of get away with both because, being who I am and liking the significance I like. And I've got a real good relationship with my divine, which is not the Buddha back there. That was just something that I found at a sale. That was really cool. I put it on the wall. Yeah. But I've got a really good relationship with my divine. And the way it works is my divine, when it speaks to me, lets me think it's my idea. So I won't argue. And then I can take credit for it. And then we're both happy. So it's like, when I'm working with people on the spiritual side, I'm just saying, yeah, you've got the desire to do it. That's the divine talking through you, whatever you choose to call it, like you say, lenses.
Yeah, absolutely. For some people, it's nature. For some people, it's angels. For some people, whatever name you give it, if it works, trust and follow it. If it doesn't, find something else.
Well, the reason I like creativity, and again, I'm sorry to harp on spirituality, but it's what I do.
No.
So,
Yeah.
the reason I like creativity is I believe the universe is expanding. I believe the divine is expanding. It's not one solid thing that's out there. And that means that there's going to be creativity. And we, as aspects of, of this divine cosmic energy, our job is to go out there and try something new just to see what it's like so we can expand the universe. And so I get great joy in that.
Yeah, I can see you get, I mean, your whole body expands when you talk about it. So
yeah,
it makes sense.
All right. So somebody who's on the creative path, right? Somebody who says, all right, I'm stuck in a rut and I'm starting to have an awareness that I'm in a rut. Because I think that's going to happen now. The frequency on the planet's changing so much. I think a lot of people are going to be uplifted. So when somebody comes across this podcast, they're stuck in a rut and they want to say, okay, how do I bring my creativity in? Do you got any simple, easy Maury Reisberg tips that will help them along the way?
Sure. I think one of the best one of my go-tos is when I find myself getting stuck in creative experience, I go do something different. I take a break and I go do something mindless, like the dishes or folding laundry, and give my mind a rest. And while I'm engaged in something else, my mind actually has more capacity to bring something else to the forefront that might inspire another aspect of my creativity. So taking a break, doing something that doesn't require a lot of thought, something that you know how to do, like the dishes or laundry, and giving yourself permission to breathe and
Both
really
my wife
take a
and
break.
Both my wife and I, we've become a thing where we say, I'm going to go for a while. And
Yeah,
that just
great.
means we're just going to go lay on the sofa and do something mindless for a while. So I'm glad I can say, oh, look, Maury said to do this. No. More tips, please.
Yeah, it's just one aspect. I mean, sometimes people will go take a shower, you get outside. I know sometimes I need to change my location, so I'll go in my backyard and take my shoes off and do some grounding in the grass. Read a book, watch a movie, listen to music. Those are all things that I think can be really helpful when you find yourself stuck. Or, I know a lot of writers who, if they get stuck, that kind of the artist's way, morning pages, writing whatever is in your mind, whether it's, this is terrible 100 times until some new thought comes into your mind. Another thing that someone recently said to me is you have to write the crappy American novel before you can write the best American novel.
Just another crappy novel.
Right. Write the crappy one, get it out of the way, and then you can write something else.
Yeah, I find that when I want to start a project, it's just a matter of starting, and then it's like terrible, but I'll plow through a page or two, and then all of a sudden the next day everything is easy and in flow.
Yeah, absolutely. Twyla Tharp has a book called, I'm not going to remember what it's called, but in it she has an exercise called Your Creative Autobiography. And that is a great tool to kind of spark your creativity by looking at the past, noting events that have happened, when you felt really creative, who did you share it with? Or who did you want to share it with and you didn't? Those kinds of things. Who inspires you, or what are your muses? So, finding those tools for you can be really helpful. Yeah, I'm just trying to think of other. I know there are so many.
Well, let me just redirect this back to you for a second. This is totally not in the questions I sent you, so this is where I'm putting you on the spot.
Perfect.
What's next? What's the big dream? And particularly, what's the big dream that you're afraid to even admit you have? As far as being creative next?
Yeah, that's such a great question. The big dream in terms of creativity, um, I think would be just like right now, it's making the request for a big name to be interviewed on my podcast.
Right. Well,
Like,
let's do it. Let's just visualize that into there. I
yeah,
just, I
getting
just literally, like last week, I put out an episode on the steps for prayer, which is IE manifestation. So,
yeah,
let's just hold that one. That's a done deal. What else? The big name.
the big name. Yeah, getting that. And I mean, in terms of creativity, yeah, getting back to the world of performing is a big on my list of things that might be a little more challenging in this time with where the world is in the performing arts. But
Right. Well, when you say performing, you're meaning more traditional because this is performance, although it's not like a stage show. It's like an authentic
right,
performance, you know?
it is absolutely. Yeah. So performing in a more traditional sense on a theater stage with an audience. I do miss that. So getting back into that. And for me also getting to share and develop more of my workshops for performers around the country is always on my list of things. And figuring out how to make them virtual and digital is also part of it.
Right. So let's use that as a segue for people listening saying, wow, I just got to go to Ms. Mari's workshop. How are they going to get in touch with you?
The best way is Facebook and Instagram, and I'm Sustaining Creativity on both of those platforms. They can also email me at Marika, which is my full name, MARIKAREISBERG @gmail.com.
Great. So for those of you listening or watching, you can look in the notes below and you won't have the full email address because I don't want some web to hack it, but you'll know what to do when you see the word @ you'll replace it. So you're going to be able to contact Mari that way. And tell me about your website again.
Oh, so it is Sustaining Creativity. Oh my gosh, I am totally not going to remember.
Sustaining Creativity Podcast is the
Sustaining
actual website.
Creativity Podcast, correct. And it's hosted through Buzzsprouts. So I know there's like some letters and numbers attached to it as well. But yeah, Sustaining Creativity Podcast is the website. You can listen wherever you listen to podcasts. And we love to hear your feedback, comment, like us, and yeah, follow us, download us.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. So remember, we're in the age of YouTube, Facebook, all that social media. Like, share, follow, and subscribe. And
Subscribe. Yay.
I'm saying that because one, I want to be recognized. And two, the computer relies on that, on who to recommend that you know and people with similar likes to you. It's all a big computer game. So help me out. Like, share, follow, subscribe. All right.
Beautiful.
Closing words, Miss Mari Reisberg, creativity sustainer from way, way back. Tell me what you want to leave people with.
What do I want to leave people with? I think the biggest thing is that with creativity, anything is possible.
That is true. The I can instead of the I can't. The let me dream it, and then be it. Anything is possible.
Nice. Yeah, and being willing to really step into that. With creativity, anything is possible. The sky's the limit.
Yeah. For me, it's a transformative thing. Spiritual or just psychological. It's a transformative thing. If I have the attitude that this is possible and I find whatever resistance is within me, then I can spend whatever I do or whatever process or technique I do to say, okay, this is my awareness. Let's do some clearing. And then you're bigger and brighter and happier.
Yes, exactly.
Sweet. All right. Well, my guest today has been Mari Reisberg from the Sustaining Creativity podcast. I'm really glad you're here. And I just want to say a big thank you to everyone listening and watching. Many blessings to you all.
Thank you so much. It's been a joy to chat about creativity and to hear your musings about it and your questions. It's fun.
It's why I'm glad that you're a guest. As soon as I met you, I'm like, oh my God, I want to interview this person because this is exactly what I'm trying to exemplify in the podcast. Becoming awesome, sustaining creativity. Thank you all. Have a great day.